Time and time again, Goku has pushed himself to the known limits of power and beyond, protecting the Earth and the universe. Now he sets off again on one search that will never end, the pursuit of ultimate strength. Farewell, Goku. We'll be looking to discover.
So I just read all of Dragon Ball Z and I watched all of Dragon Ball Z. So there is no excuse for me to be unproductive during this quarantine anymore since I've taken out all distractions that could possibly be around me.
You've watched the anime. Now play it on January 17th, 2020.
Huh.
My favorite thing about Dragon Ball as a video game franchise specifically is how easy it is for it to fit in so many genres. You got fighting games, beat 'em up games, card games, arcade card games, MMOs, Connect games, gacha games, tactics games, and so much more. The basics of what makes Dragon Ball so fun is something that can easily be translated to many types of genres. But weirdly enough, RPGs almost always seem to be an afterthought. What makes an RPG fun is seeing your character progress from a guy who can barely hold his own against the basic soldier to a beast with the capabilities to destroy gods. That is also the driving idea behind the journey that makes Dragon Ball so much fun to watch. But Dragon Ball has never really embraced RPGs. Sure, there are games that include experience and leveling up as an in-game mechanic, but none of the games are pure RPGs. The Xenoverse series are fighting games with Destiny-esque mechanics for progression, and even old games are card-based RPGs where everything's determined by card value. The Legacy of Goku series and the Attack of the Saiyans are the only games I can think of that were traditional RPGs, and while both had their strengths, they felt like very weird versions of this story that we all know and love. Enter Dragon Ball Game Project Z. Bandai Namco teased us with a trailer that announced we'd be getting a Dragon Ball Z action RPG, and I pretty much fell in love with it immediately. Fucking Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is my literal perfect Dragon Ball game. Open world action RPG gameplay in Dragon Ball, early 2020, sign me the fuck up! The Dragon Ball Z story has been told through the games millions of times over by now, even when it ends up being a crutch to the actual game. But for almost all of them, presentation and story were second to the gameplay itself. Usually we only ever see the big moments of Dragon Ball and never get the stuff I really liked about it, namely the characters and their interactions. And what better way to re-experience this story than in a huge open world RPG? But does it really scratch the itch that I've been wanting? That's what we're here to find out. This is Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. When I heard there was going to be an action RPG based on Dragon Ball Z, the main thing I was hoping to get was a Kingdom Hearts-esque kind of game retelling the Dragon Ball story. Kingdom Hearts is fun for Disney fans not because of the overbloated story or the anime moves, but because of its wish fulfillment of exploring your favorite movies. The magic that builds up when you see Cinderella's castle at Disney World for the first time, Kingdom Hearts has that in pretty much every single one of its worlds. That pure Disney magic given to you through the lens of a JRPG. That was my expectation, to be able to see that same kind of magic put into the world of Dragon Ball Z. Other DBZ games tease me with this idea of exploration in the Dragon Ball universe, but all of it is very surface level and shallow, acting as another way to get from one fight to the other. See, Dragon Ball games have never had the best storytelling. Usually they just play off the original series and just skip from fight to fight. When they have original stories, the presentation tends to leave a lot to be desired, or they still just rehash the same moments from the anime. They disregard almost everything that is an action solely to get to the best set pieces for the story. Kakarot does the smart thing by actually relishing in the series filler. Rather than starting out with the gang at Kame House like the manga and most of the games, we start where the anime started, with Goku and Gohan having their own little adventure, making their relationship an integral part of the story going forward. You start with a tutorial battle against Piccolo, but then the game just slows down. You learn how to fish, how to fly, how to collect items, you know, JRPG stuff. It's cute, it's fun, it's exactly what I wanted. I finally got something that scratched that itch. Yes, the fights and the special moves are super important, but I have decades worth of games just for that kind of experience. What I don't really have is a way to experience the other half of Dragon Ball. The half that gets no attention in the games, the characters. The fights themselves are really awesome and beautiful, but without any sort of character development, it's just another fight with nothing special about it. It's why the original Super Saiyan is so cool, but Super Saiyan Blue is just another one. Kakarot is the first time I've played this story and I felt a similar emotional reaction to when I watched the anime. Going on this adventure alongside these characters rather than just being shown it does add a lot of emotional impact, but the game doesn't know how to make the story we're following more engaging. Kakarot really does feel like a PS2 RPG given life through Unreal 4, and I really do admire it for that. But that also is true when talking about the game's presentation. All of the trailers and commercials are using all of the game's best cutscenes, reanimating the most hype moments of the show in a new, really stylized way that still feels inspired by what came before. The sad thing is, these are very few and far between. Most of the game just looks like this.
Get out of here right now! He's going to absorb you, 17!
What? Absorb me? What are you talking about?
I'll make it simple. That there is Cell, a monster that was created by Dr. Girox's computer.
This is... These static characters just sitting in place and talking. It would be one thing if this was just a way to do scenes that were unimportant or just side quests, but this is done for so much of the game that it starts to feel boring. This is a 40-hour game where most of the cutscenes are just these characters standing and talking without doing anything interesting to the presentation. This gets especially bad during the Android Saga. The Android Saga and its story is a lot of sitting and waiting. We wait for Goku to get back, we wait for the androids to appear, we wait for Goku to get better, we wait in the hyperbolic time chamber, we wait for the Cell games. The game doesn't do anything to make this feel interesting. And since we don't have anything to do, most of the time is just the cycling through text bubbles to get us to the next story fight. The game's over-reliance on this outdated style of presentation starts to get grating after a while. That is part of the reason why the Majin Buu saga does work pretty well.
This is what I'm supposed to do, right?
Yep, thanks, Vegeta.
What just happened? All right now!
So much of the story is animated and the rapid-fire nature of its pacing works as the final act of this giant adventure. Towards the beginning of the game, it really does understand how to draw you into this world. To help you learn the basic mechanics of the game, your movement options and abilities get restricted, but there's an in-universe reason for it. A majority of the Saiyan saga has you playing as Gohan, someone who has no idea how to use his powers. So you take down dinosaurs, you learn to survive on your own, it makes you learn alongside Gohan. And in contrast to that, the game has you play as Piccolo, who has full access to all of your basic movement abilities and greater power. It's using gameplay to help you understand our characters. But this melding of gameplay and story isn't something the game wants to hold on to for long. Once the tutorials are done, the game becomes rather straightforward and moments like that become extremely rare. And the presentation of the game starts to get slow and annoying. So you're left with an expansive JRPG world that non-fans will get bored of and fans will get burnt out on. It hit me toward the end of the Namek saga that this is how the game was going to be all the way through. By the time Cell was introduced, I was starting to wonder how much the game skips to get me to the end faster. The main issue with Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is its over-reliance on showing you the story rather than letting you experience it yourself. Dragon Ball is the perfect series to adapt into games, especially in a genre that is focused on growth. But the game doesn't know how to balance what the story needs with what the gameplay loop expects out of you. Let's take the end of the Android saga. The last time we play as Goku is when he's defending himself against the Cell Juniors. From then on out, we play as Gohan. So as we continue the story into the Majin Buu arc, we help Gohan grow by defeating enemies, doing side quests, and stuff like that. So we experience the growth of Gohan in the game. But when Goku gets reintroduced into the story after being dead for 7 years, he gets 15 million experience points so he can get caught up. That is so disappointing for so many reasons. The growth that makes Dragon Ball so enjoyable is taken away for the convenience of setting up the next boss fight. It would be one thing if this happened at story appropriate moments like the Elder Kai ritual or the hyperbolic time chamber, but at the frequency at which this happens, it just screams of contrivance. The fun of seeing your character grow is taken away from you in order to follow that story as closely as possible. But even then, stuff that could have been done to intertwine story and gameplay more are just skipped over in favor of having another generic boss fight. Melding narrative with gameplay goes a long way in making the story an experience that can only be done through video games. The first time we face Bowser in Paper Mario is a great example of this. This is a scripted fight meant to help you learn the basic battle mechanics and to set up the stakes for the story. You fight Bowser to learn how battles will be set up, but halfway through, he pulls out the Star Rod. His power increases, putting Mario in danger and making him tired. And worst off, your attacks now do nothing to him. We know we can't win. He knows we can't win. So he hits us with his fire breath, doing our full health as damage, showing that he was just taunting us from the beginning. Even though it's scripted, that is a great example of using gameplay to show off how powerful your enemy is. And it makes the endgame so much better when we're put back in the same situation, but manage to win because of how much we as the player have grown. Kakarot has none of that. Take the fight with Vegeta vs Frieza. Vegeta believes himself to have become a Super Saiyan.
After all, you're up against your greatest fear. A Super Saiyan!
He starts fighting Frieza only to be completely outmatched. None of his attacks are doing anything, and after doing one last Hail Mary with everything he's got, he starts to cry, realizing it isn't enough. Goku then arrives on the scene and manages to keep up with Frieza, eventually becoming a Super Saiyan and ending his tyrannical reign. But the game doesn't let you feel that same emotion at all. Rather, the game just tells you that this is what's happening. In the game, Frieza vs Vegeta is just another fight. The characters have banter during the battle, and it talks about how Vegeta's barely making a dent, but in the reality of the game, I'm wiping the floor with him. So there's this disconnect between what the story is telling me is happening and what's actually going on. I spent 20 hours on this game to get to this point. I did every side quest. If the developers wanted me to feel the hopelessness Vegeta is feeling, then the fight shouldn't have felt like every other one. This is a fight that should have made me feel overwhelmed. This is a fight that should have made me look back at all of the time I already sank into the game and think it was worthless. If you're making a game with the goal of making me feel like I'm taking part in this timeless story, then I shouldn't have been able to beat Frieza with the same strategy that I handle basic enemies with. Even though the story presentation is lacking, the gameplay at least kept me interested enough to finish the main game. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot knows how to turn the flashy battles of the anime into an engaging battle system. You play as one of the Z fighters with 2 others in your party. You can equip the playable characters with 4 special moves that are based on the character's attacks from the anime, and you can equip your party members with 2 moves. You can punch your enemies when you're up close, fire ki blasts to do damage from afar, rush towards them, and dodge. You can also block incoming attacks, and even counter an opponent's move if you have enough ki. If you fill up your tension gauge, you can charge your ki to max and enter a super mode that boosts all of your stats and lets you spam all your supers. This battle system allows for the spectacle of the anime to shine through. Bosses are exceptionally fun in this game, with their special moves turning the game into a bullet hell to avoid it. You can interrupt their attacks and get fun animations. These moments in the fights are what make the game as hype as it is. In these moments, you feel it. The passion, the excitement. It is that feeling that makes Dragon Ball so exciting. The problem is that each saga is roughly 10 to 15 hours, and the boss fights that take advantage of the unique mechanics are few and far between. Like, I never thought I would walk away from a Dragon Ball game saying Kuldo was one of the coolest bosses in the entire thing. Regular enemies don't have these kind of cool special attacks, and with how over-leveled you can be, the fights become very one-sided. In any RPG, when I'm in a situation where I can one-shot normal enemies and they do chip damage, I get bored. Kakarot gives you the ability to skip fights by slamming into them in the overworld, but how small enemies are makes it hard to line up your hits. I end up going in circles just attempting to hit them as they chase me, and if you aren't at full speed, then you will be in that boring, easily winnable fight. And even if you do find enemies that are around your level, the fight isn't as lucrative as you would think. It's like I said earlier, the strength of your characters are going to be more in relation to where the story is at that point, so fighting regular enemies can just feel like a waste of time. Side quests are available depending on where you are in the story, meaning you can actually miss them. At first, side quests are fun little distractions from the main quest, but as time goes on, you see the patterns and how repetitive they can be. Almost every side quest in the game amounts to fighting a thing, doing a minigame, or doing one of the RPG activities like fishing or hunting. Despite being one of the selling points, the length of Kakarot is actually the thing that killed it for me. 40-ish hours to do the whole story sounds like a dream, but when there isn't much to do, then your game just becomes repetitive. Don't get me wrong, there is so much you can do in the overworld. You can hunt animals for ingredients, you can cook recipes to increase your stats both temporarily and permanently, you can fish, you can attack dinosaurs, and you can destroy bases. But all of it amounts to pretty much nothing. Like, great, I can spend all my time doing this stuff, but why would I want to? It's just busy work because it really won't make your character that much stronger in relation to just this. Of all the things that could get in the way of making me feel like I'm in the world of Dragon Ball, Who would have thought the main thing stopping me would be Dragon Ball? This game doesn't allow for you to have any form of expression outside of exactly where the characters are in the story of the game. I am constantly split between two different opinions with this game. This is the best way to experience the story of Dragon Ball through video game as a medium, but that's all it is. Maybe my expectations were just too high. Maybe a Kingdom Hearts-esque story is just too hard to pull off with a story this rigid. The core of Kingdom Hearts has nothing to do with pure raw strength. Leveling up through battles and learning new abilities is sort of wrapped in this idea that you get stronger with the bonds from your friends. So story-wise, our characters are as strong as we need them to be for that scene of the story to work. And Kingdom Hearts even has some moments where you're weakened, leading to you being unable to fight back against threats. Contrast that with Dragon Ball. Strength is so important in this world to the point where strength has a measurable number in this universe. So to make the story authentic, you have to adhere to those numbers and those rules. So in a game as wide open as this, there isn't a reason to want to explore it. Why bother getting stronger when I'm supposed to lose the next fight? Victories after a grueling fight don't feel good because in the next cutscene that victory is undermined in service to the story. The game was supposed to be the story of Goku, but it just feels like Goku is a side character. Most of Z is waiting for Goku to meet up with our heroes. So during the intermission between sagas and hell during the main story, it feels like Gohan is the main character. Which is why the ending doesn't feel satisfying when we take the final boss on as Goku because he has been absent for so much of the game. I never thought that in a game that prides itself so hard in adhering to its story, the thing that would ruin it for me would be the story. When all the stars align and you get your favorite part from the anime, it's a magical experience. But for a majority of the time, that story is what is limiting your experience. If Kakarot was an original story, then I think it would have worked out so much better. Same mechanics, but with a new story that can take advantage of the medium rather than adhering to the same story that fans like you and me know like the back of our hands. Who knows? Maybe next time. And that's what I thought of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know down below, or join my Discord to get a discussion going. And if you want to know what I thought of other Dragon Ball media, then click this playlist right over here. And why not subscribe so you know whenever I post a new video? Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.